envoyé au Comic Con Paris. Sorry?
There's another one?
No, just you. Merci beaucoup. Thank you so much for being here. C'est un honneur pour nous. It's an honor for us to have you here.
I don't know what exactly your relationship with France is. You make it sound kind of kinky, you know, but...
J'ai pas vraiment de relation avec la France, et si on commence à parler de relations, ça paraît un peu kinky, un peu chelou.
But, well, I've always liked France very much. I've been here, this time it's just for 2 or 3 days, but in the past, in 1981, my wife and I honeymooned here in Paris, in France, about a week in Paris and a couple of weeks driving around the countryside, looking at various monoliths, you know, the big stone monoliths from the past.
Quelle pierre?
Monoliths, you know, stone monuments, you know, like they have Stonehenge in England. But they have a lot of stone.
Une grande pierre, je ne sais pas compris laquelle c'était. Mais en fait, il est venu en 1981. Il est venu avec sa femme. Il avait passé une semaine à Paris. Puis après, il s'était un petit peu promené. Il avait pris sa voiture. Ils avaient un peu bougé. Ce panel est dédié évidemment à Stan Lee. This particular panel is dedicated to Stan the Man Lee. Before we start to understand your relationship with Lee, let's watch 1 minute of pure joy. Est-ce qu'on peut mettre 1 minute d'une petite vidéo que j'ai sélectionnée? So young, Stan the Man Lee.
That was a cable TV show in New York.
C'était un show sur le câble à la télé.
And it had such a low reach, you know, as far as how far it would travel, that I lived in one address on East 86th Street in New York, and I had to go about 10 or 20 blocks south to my girlfriend's apartment to watch the show. I couldn't see it there.
C'était vraiment un petit show câblé.
Little parts of New York.
C'était vraiment tout petit et c'était lui-même habité assez haut à New York et il fallait qu'il
Evidently, Stan did a number of these with John Romita and a couple of other people, but this seems to be the only one that has survived. I don't know what that means.
Il en a fait pas mal, Stan.
I think I destroyed all the other ones.
Stan Lee en a fait pas mal des comme ça, des interviews, mais celle-là est plutôt restée. That was in 1976, but I think you met Stan Lee in 1965, right? You wrote The Man a Letter. Can you tell us about that? Il a écrit en 1965 une lettre à Stan Lee. Est-ce que vous pouvez nous raconter?
Yes. Well, Stan and I had exchanged 1 or 2 letters when I was back in St. Louis teaching halfway across the United States.
Quand il était professeur, parce qu'il a d'abord été professeur à Saint-Louis aux États-Unis, et ils avaient échangé une ou 2 lettres.
But then I came to New York not to work for Stan. I was hired to be the assistant editor of the Superman comics. You know, at that time there was a Superman comic, Superboy, Lois and Lane, Jimmy Olsen. I think Crypto the Superdog probably had his own comic.
Et en fait, il était venu à New York non pas pour travailler avec Marvel, mais pour travailler en tant que assistant éditeur sur des titres comme Superman, Supergirl, et il y avait probablement aussi le Super Chien.
And but I was unhappy at that job. I didn't like my boss. He had a reputation, well deserved, for treating his employees rather shabbily. So I wrote Stan a letter from my hotel, not from Missouri again this time, but from my hotel in Manhattan, and sent it to him relatively, you know, maybe 10, 20, 30 blocks away in Manhattan, just to see if he'd like to go out for a drink sometime. I enjoyed his comics and wanted to meet him, and he sort of knew who I was. But he wasn't interested in that, so he called me to tell me that he didn't socialize much because he lived, you know, out on Long Island. But he'd like to take if I wanted to take a writing test that he gave out to people, he'd love to see me try that.
Ok, et en fait il lui a écrit quand même une lettre parce qu'en fait il s'ennuyait dans le job d'assistant éditeur qu'il avait sur ces titres-là. Et donc il lui a dit voilà, si par hasard vous avez besoin, je peux peut-être venir vous voir et faire quelque chose. Et Stan lui a répondu, lui a dit bah, on n'a qu'à faire un writing test, un test, on n'a qu'à faire un test écrit.
Now, some of you I know out there speak both French and English. Is he really translating what I said, or is he just making stuff up?
Est-ce que vous avez besoin que je traduise ou est-ce que ça va?
Non.
Est-ce que, voilà, on va dire plus simple, est-ce qu'il y a des gens qui veulent que je continue à traduire ou pas? Oui, they need some translation, I'm sorry about that. Some of the people need the translation.
No, I just wasn't sure you were translating me. I thought maybe you're making...
No, it's translated. So you did a writing test, and then?
It consisted of, I didn't need stand while I was doing this. I picked it up at the office during my lunch hour that I sneaked over from DC, and took it back the next day. And didn't think much more about it. I still wasn't quite looking for a job. I was determined to try to make it at DC, even if I hated my boss, because I liked some of the other people there. But things kept getting worse. And in the meantime, the next morning, the writing test, by the way, was to supply dialogue to 4 pages of a Fantastic Four story that had already been printed. They had like a black and white page where they took the balloons off, and I was supposed to write my own dialogue, and that was the test.
En fait, il a fait le test, mais bon, il y allait de manière un peu tranquille, parce que oui, il s'entendait pas très bien avec la personne avec qui il travaillait chez l'ancêtre de DC, en fait. Mais il s'était quand même, il a dit, bon, je vais quand même le faire. Et en fait, c'était un test, il fallait qu'il écrive quelques pages des 4 fantastiques. Donc il y allait, enfin en tout cas, il a écrit, il a fait son truc, et puis il y a pu penser.
So I got a call the next morning at DC, you know, kind of anonymous, you know, so that, and I was asked to come over, would I like to meet Stan at lunch? So I sneaked over yet again, took an extra long lunch hour.
Et donc en fait, il a eu un appel chez DC, un peu anonyme, quelqu'un l'appelle et lui dit bonjour, je vous appelle, est-ce que ça vous intéresserait de venir rencontrer Stan Lee? Voilà, on est oublié qu'on était déjà chez DC, le concurrent évidemment de Marvel.
Is it true?
Yep.
And so
so you went to see the man?
I went to see him. That's the first time I'd actually met him. He was, you know, very much like you'd expect. He's kind of open. Of course, you know, he's not on quite as much as he would be at conventions and so forth years later, but he was, you know, very outgoing and friendly, very easy to talk to, and he never did tell me anything about the test. I presume I passed it, but he never mentioned it.
Il a même pas, il a rencontré
those pages again in all these years.
Il a rencontré Stan Lee, il était très sympa, comme vous avez peut-être eu la chance de rencontrer sur certaines conventions. Il n'est pas venu en France, mais il était venu aux États-Unis. Et voilà, il était très sympathique, très ouvert, mais il n'a pas du tout parlé du test qu'ils avaient fait. Ils n'en ont même pas du tout parlé. C'était la première fois qu'il le rencontrait.
But after about 15 minutes or so, he suddenly, you know, said, "Oh, so what do we have to do to hire you away from National?" National was, you know, the name that DC used at that time. And I said, "Well, I don't like it there, so just offer me a job, and okay, I'll quit."
Alors, Stan Lee lui a dit au bout d'un moment, après plusieurs minutes de discussion, what do we have to do to hire you? Qu'est-ce qu'on doit faire pour vous engager? Et il lui a dit, oh, bah, vous savez, je m'ennuie vraiment, enfin ça ne m'amuse pas du tout ce que je fais chez l'ancêtre de DC, donc si vous avez un job pour moi, je le prends. And you were paid like $110 a week, right?
Well, the thing was, Mort Weisinger, the Superman editor, by long distance had offered me $110 a week, which was a lot more money than it is now, still not that much to live in New York City, but about what I was being paid as a high school teacher at the time. But when I got to New York, suddenly it became $100. And I said, what happened to the other $10? And he pointed at the cubicle down the hall where the assistant I was replacing worked, and he said, I can't pay you more than I'm paying that idiot.
Et en fait, il était payé 110, vous avez compris, il était payé, lui il souhaitait être payé $110 et on lui a proposé $100. Et il a dit, mais on avait dit 110, et il a dit, mais je ne peux pas te payer plus que l'autre qui est là-bas quand même. Donc ils sont restés à $100. You say in the little clip that you were 24 when you arrived at Marvel. You said you were an old Jew compared to the other folks. Il dit dans le petit clip qu'on a vu qu'il était un vieux à l'époque parce qu'il avait 24 ans quand il est arrivé comparé aux autres. Why did you say that? They were very youngsters?
Yes, well, I look young, I mean, you know, younger than my 24 years, but the fact that I was 24, I had taught high school in Missouri for 4 years, and the reason I say that is that the first, for example, I was told that by the first comics professional I ever met, Wendell Crowley, who had been in the 1940s and 50s, had been the editor of Fawcett's Captain Marvel. You know, at that time, a very popular character. he told me, it was true, that all of us got into the field, he said, when we were teenagers. You know, Stan had been 18 or so.
En fait, ils ont tous commencé
They were all 18, 19 years old when he got to field, 20, but that was, years before.
Parce que lui, il a commencé, il est arrivé, il avait 24 ans, mais en fait, tout le monde lui disait, les anciens qu'il avait rencontrés, tout le monde lui disait qu'en fait, dans ce métier, on commence extrêmement jeune, on commence à 19 ans, Stanley, il est arrivé à 19 ans, les gens arrivent à 18 ans. I think Jim Shooter arrived in the industry, he was like 14 or something like that, and Jim Shooter, que vous avez peut-être entendu parler, je crois qu'il est arrivé dans le milieu, il avait 14 ans.
As a matter of fact, Jim Shooter sort of arrived while I was there, because somewhere in the middle of that 8 days that I worked there, the boss, Mort, came and showed me these scripts he had got mailed into him from Pennsylvania. He didn't tell me the name of the person. He said, this is some kid, he's like 13, 14 years old, and he mailed me these scripts. I guess he's trying to make me feel like I better watch this, if I'm going to keep my job. The funny, and so that was Jim Shooter's first contact with Walt Eisner. And the funny thing is that evidently Mort still didn't hire him and buy those scripts actually for another 6 months. He let the guy just wait. Finally, 6 months later, he finally bought them.
Il a fait une petite parenthèse sur Jim Shooter, je vais pas vous la résumer, mais en gros il a été éditeur-in-chief à Marvel un petit peu plus tard et qui est arrivé quand il avait à peine 14 ans, il lui montrait ses scripts. Your mom started to read some comics to you when you were like 4, right? Sa maman a commencé à lui lire des comics quand il avait à peine 4 ans.
Yes, well, I evidently saw them, on the shelves at the drugstore.
Ah oui, ça les voyait dans les drugstores, les épiceries en fait.
Yes. And it was probably Superman or Batman.
Sûrement Superman, Batman.
And of course I couldn't read yet at the age of 4.
Vous pouvez pas lire.
But I don't know exactly how old it was. Maybe I just turned 4 and a half, or less than that. And she would read them to me. But I didn't understand them for a while. For example, I know that she read me some Batman and Robin, but I thought she was saying Batman and Robin. That may not be quite easy to translate because I thought they were crooks because they wore masks.
Et en fait, au début, quand sa mère lui lisait, il devait avoir 4 ans et demi, il n'avait pas très bien compris le terme, il avait cru qu'il disait Batman, ça veut dire les méchants, and robbers, ça veut dire l'élastique, le caoutchouc élastique. Ah, robber, un voleur. Alors, un voleur.
I learned better soon. By the time I entered the first grade, we didn't have kindergarten back then. By the time I entered the first grade, I had a fairly good vocabulary. Way ahead of most of the students, but of course I could only read capital letters.
Your first superheroes was called Elephant Giant. You created a superhero called Elephant Giant. Il a créé un super-héros qui s'appelait, quand il était... Well, you were youngster, right? Seven. Il a créé un super-héros qui s'appelait Géant l'éléphant.
Well, I was a little kid, so naturally I made the hero. His name was Elephant Giant, who could grow to enormous size.
Vous pouvez devenir très grand.
Yeah. I still have that comic somewhere at home because my mother saved it. And interestingly, it has several stories. 2 or 3 are Elephant Giant, and others are other giants. It was called All Giant Comics.
Et en fait, il avait créé ces comics comme ça. Il les a toujours chez lui quelque part. Sa mère les avait tous gardés.
But it was ambitious. The first comic I did was like 50 pages long.
Ah, le premier comics qu'il a créé quand il était tout petit, en fait, ça faisait déjà une cinquantaine de pages. Stanley said you were, I quote, a godsend to me. He just said that in the little clip that.
That's sort of like a play.
Et you worked on dans le petit clip, Stanley dit qu'en fait c'était un cadeau de Dieu quand il a vu Roy Thomas. Why did he say that? It was very difficult for him to find some good editors, some good writers.
Well, he had people who were good writers and who had done great work in the field, writing a few of the early Marvel stories. There was Jerry Siegel, the creator of Superman.
Il avait évidemment
Robert Bernstein,
des bons scénaristes comme
Robert Bernstein and other good writers, and who had written for him back in the 50s and 40s, but he just didn't like what they were doing. He didn't feel they understood his approach to comics. They were writing like the old comics, but they weren't writing the kind of comics that he was writing, and they didn't seem to understand what he was.
Stanley trouvait que les scénaristes de l'époque ne comprenaient pas exactement ce qu'ils voulaient faire, et donc c'était des très bons scénaristes, mais qui ne correspondaient pas à l'esprit qu'ils voulaient. What was his spirit in those times? You said he was looking for some particular writers. Qu'est-ce qu'il cherchait exactement?
Just people who would write about, who could understand that, give them personal problems, speak like real people.
Il voulait que ce soit des héros qui parlent comme des gens normaux, pas comme des super-héros.
While I enjoyed the work of other comics writers too, like Grande and so forth at DC, the fact remained I felt that Stan was at that time very definitely the best writer in the comics. And so while I couldn't write as well, at least I sort of understood what he was trying to do. He had put an ad in the New York Times a month or two before, I found out later, and something like 100 people out of the comic.
Il avait mis une petite annonce dans le journal, il avait découvert ça, et il avait reçu une centaine de personnes, mais il n'y avait personne qui correspondait. Donc c'est pour ça qu'il parlait d'un cadeau de Dieu quand il a...
So I guess I was kind of, I was lucky. I was the right person at the right time.
J'ai eu de la chance, j'ai été la bonne personne au bon moment. I think your first gig when you were at Marvel was on Iron Man, right?
Well, as far as superheroes, my first gig was Millie the Model.
Which one?
Millie the Model. The model.
The model.
She was a model, like a fashion model. Yeah, she was a model comics. Millie the Model.
Okay.
And it was kind of, at that time, being done as a kind of semi-romance comic.
En fait, il y avait des comics un peu romantiques à l'époque, a priori.
And very shortly after that, he gave me an Iron Man story of dialogue. It had already been drawn. It was the first story that Gene Colan drew.
En fait, il a commencé avec... ensuite, il a fait sa première histoire de super-héros avec le grand Gene Colan, et ils ont fait au dessin, et ils ont fait ensemble, effectivement, une histoire d'Iron Man. Did he double-check what you used to do? Est-ce qu'il vérifiait? What was
that story? He didn't just double-check. He rewrote about half of it. And if you ever see that story, it was in American comics. It was Tales of Suspense number 73. And there are no hard credits in the book. It just says, everybody in the office worked on the story. Stan Lee, Rascal Roy Thomas, so-and-so who's the artist, so-and-so who's the colorist, He had about 6 or 7 names. There were no real credits saying who did what. That was his way of keeping me humble until I learned to do it well enough to please him.
Il disait qu'au début, tout le monde, il mettait à l'écrit que tout le monde participait d'une certaine manière. Il y avait Stanley qui participait, il disait que Roy Thomas participait, que les dessinateurs participaient à l'histoire. Voilà. What was his method, or maybe Marvel method in those times? I mean, they had to double check everything you did, or oui, comment ça fonctionnait à l'époque? Est-ce que Marvel vérifiait tous vos histoires? Did you first write the story and then you did it with the artist? How did it work?
Well,
comment il travaillait?
Of course, in the case of the Iron Man, it had already been penciled, and I was simply adding dialogue. I was getting me into it.
Rajouter des dialogues, par exemple, sur des histoires d'Iron Man.
And that was true with the first couple of stories. The next two were Doctor Strange, 10-page stories drawn and plotted by Steve Ditko. So again, I was only adding dialogue.
Ensuite, c'était Steve Ditko qui avait fait les histoires de Doctor Strange. Et parce que la dernière fois, j'avais dit Doctor Strange, parce que quand j'étais gamin, je disais Strange, donc je disais toujours Doctor Strange. Et voilà. Et en fait, il fallait qu'il y ait des dialogues sur les fabuleuses histoires de Steve Ditko.
The problem, and at that time, it was okay because I would write the dialogue on little transparent overlays, transparent paper over the art so that he could see it before it was lettered in ink.
En fait, il fallait avant, quand il dessinait, il y avait les dessins évidemment des dessinateurs, et puis par-dessus, il y avait une feuille transparente, un calque qui était posé où il y avait les bulles. Il fallait mettre les dialogues à l'intérieur.
And he wrote a lot, but he was finding more than he liked. He was, fairly happy. I'm sorry, I'm turning away.
Désolé, je ne suis pas tourné vers ces personnes-là également.
The thing is that then he began to have me, when he was in a hurry, he would have me start to write the stories, and they would send them directly to the letter first. So that by the time he saw my dialogue for the first time, it was in English. And he'd still want to change just as much because it wasn't quite like what he did. So, and of course that costs a lot more time and money because you're having to white out the ink and write the new lines. And it was the production manager who had to get the books out to the printer. He was just being driven crazy by Stan's rewriting stuff.
Voilà, c'est vraiment un travail collectif, mais ils ont petit à petit, le style a pas mal évolué. In 1972, he became editor-in-chief when Lee became the publisher.
By then he wasn't rewriting so much anymore.
Sorry?
By then he wasn't rewriting much.
En 72, il est devenu rédacteur en chef et il écrivait plus, pendant ce temps-là, Stanley n'écrivait plus beaucoup, il était devenu directeur de la publication. Faire attention avec les mots en anglais et en français. Your way of doing the job, was it different from Stan's way of doing it? Est-ce que c'était différent quand vous êtes devenu rédacteur en chef par rapport au travail que faisait Stanley en tant que rédacteur en chef, editor-in-chief?
Well, I wanted to do it as much like Stan as possible because it worked very well, and that was the way he had trained.
Il a continué à faire comme faisait déjà Stanley.
Which mainly consisted of increasingly just getting good writers. Good artists too, of course.
Il cherchait des bons scénaristes, évidemment des bons artistes.
And then letting them write and overseeing them with a kind of a loose hand, so that they had a lot of freedom to do things their way, as long as they understood, the essentials of what they had to accomplish, and they had to do books that we thought would, sell.
Il supervisait, mais il voulait quand même leur laisser un peu la liberté pour qu'ils puissent aussi créer, ne pas les étouffer.
But I was never like, if any of you have seen Stan, pictures of Stan on the stage conventions, or he's been here. Was he in Paris?
No.
No, I didn't remember ever hearing him, but he was in Europe a number of times and other countries. And he was very flamboyant. He liked, he liked to run around and, do this and that, and I was not like that. I sat there, I talked to people, but I wasn't flamboyant. I didn't jump up on the furniture, illustrate a point or anything like that. That wasn't my nature. So in that sense, I was probably a lot quieter. But
il était plus calme, plus timide, en tout cas que l'était Stanley, qui était quelqu'un d'extrêmement flamboyant. Il demandait s'il était venu au Comic-Con. Voilà, hélas, on n'a pas eu cette chance-là. I would like to talk about a particular character. You did not create this character, but you bring this character to Marvel, which is Conan the Barbarian. En fait, j'aurais parlé d'un personnage très précis qui s'appelle Conan le Barbare. Moi, j'ai découvert le travail de Roy Thomas, je pense, entre autres, à travers le travail de Conan, qu'il a fait sur Conan. Conan c'était d'abord des livres. First it was novels.
Short stories, really.
Short stories.
One novel and a number of short stories.
Voilà, en fait, Conan c'était d'abord des livres, des histoires courtes et un roman. It was 1970 that you brought his character.
Yes.
Yeah, and why did you choose this particular guy, Conan, with no costumes, nothing at all, no superpowers, sort of? Pourquoi avez-vous voulu apporter ce personnage à Marvel? Why did you choose this one?
Well, actually, it was the readers, that Marvel's readers, as much as anything. They were, at that time in the late 1960s, they were writing us letters saying that besides the superheroes, we should be getting other things. And there were 4 particular areas they kept writing us letters about. One was sword and sorcery. Sometimes Conan, but if not Conan, some character.
En fait, les gens écrivaient et demandaient souvent d'autres histoires. Ils disaient c'est bien les super-héros, mais on aimerait bien également d'autres histoires. Et ce qu'ils demandaient, c'était des sword and sorcery, c'est-à-dire ce que nous on appellerait d'heroic fantasy, voilà, de l'épée et du forest. Je crois qu'on peut parler d'heroic fantasy.
One was Doc Savage, the pulp character who was then appearing in
Il voulait également
old 1930s stories.
également prendre un personnage des années 30 qui s'appelle toujours d'ailleurs Doc Savage. Je crois pas qu'on écrive beaucoup autour de Doc Savage.
The third was J.R.R. Tolkien's Lord of the Rings.
Et il voulait le Seigneur des Anneaux, Tolkien.
And the other was the works of Edgar Rice Burroughs, Tarzan and John Carter and Mars, that kind of thing.
Il voulait les personnages de Tarzan et de John Carter. Tout le monde rêvait. En fait, voilà, les gens lui écrivaient pour dire nous on aimerait bien que ces personnages viennent rejoindre l'aventure Marvel.
So, with Sword and Sorcery, Stan, for some reason, rather than just creating a character who was a Conan type of character, a Sword and Sorcery character, so many of the letters were saying, why don't you get the rights to one of these characters, like Conan, Call, or Spondor? There were 3 or 4 imitation characters. Why don't you get the rights to one of those characters? So instead of himself or having me make up a character, he said, we should get the rights to one of these
En
characters.
fait, il a dit, c'est Stanley qui lui a dit, mais plutôt que d'essayer de créer des personnages qui vont ressembler à, pourquoi pas prendre les droits sur ces personnages, sur Tarzan, sur Conan.
So he asked me to write a memo of 2 or 3 pages to the publisher.
Alors, il a écrit un mémo, un texte de 2-3 pages pour envoyer à l'éditeur de la publication.
The memo was to say why we should do that, why we should license a character like that, and so I emphasized the things that were like our comics. It was a bold, strong hero, beautiful women, not always attired for cold weather.
En fait, il a dû écrire et expliquer pourquoi ces personnages charismatiques devaient, entre guillemets, rejoindre Marvel, pourquoi les éditeurs devaient absolument vendre les licences autour de ces personnages. Donc il a dit qu'il avait besoin d'un personnage charismatique, de jeunes femmes très belles.
And then villains like the evil wizards and monsters.
Et puis évidemment des sorciers très méchants, évidemment, et des monstres, bien sûr, puisque dans Conan, il y a un peu de tout ça.
And this memo, for some reason, made a big impression on the publisher, and he said, okay, you can offer up to $150 an issue for one of these characters.
$150.
Yeah, that was a lot more money than now, but still was not a king's ransom.
En fait, l'éditeur a été un peu impressionné. Il a accepté pour $150 par histoire, par histoire, qu'il puisse utiliser le personnage comme Conan. But Stanley was not really keen on sword and sorcery, right? Mais en fait, Stanley n'était pas très fan des histoires d'héroïques.
But I wasn't either.
Ah, lui non.
I read a little of it. I had bought the first Conan paperback book that came out.
Il avait acheté les histoires dans les années 60, il avait acheté les premiers livres autour de ces
In
histoires.
large part for the Frank Frazetta cover, I knew his work. But I read a few pages and it wasn't exactly what I thought it was going to be or was looking for. This was 2 or 3 years earlier, so I put it aside on my shelf. I kept buying the books for the covers, but I never read them.
Ouais, et en fait, il les avait achetés pour les couvertures qu'il adorait, mais il les avait pas vraiment lus.
In the meantime, I did read one short novel about a sort of Conan-like character named Fondor, who was sort of half Conan and half John Carter of Mars, and that actually Stan liked the name Fondor better than he liked the name Conan. Fondor. So he said, oh, okay, let's go after Fondor. So I did.
Ah voilà, il a créé ce personnage qui était un mélange entre Conan et Jack Carter que Stanley aimait beaucoup. Je sais que vous avez des questions à poser à Thomas, parce que c'est la première fois qu'il vient en France, en tout cas qu'il vient au Comic Con, donc je suis vraiment très heureux. You left in 1981, I think. You left Marvel in 1981, right?
Yes, actually 1980. Of course, the books for DC was coming in 81. Actually, I left.
Because of a dispute with Jim Shooter, is that the right? And so to that, il s'est séparé, il est parti en 1980. C'est une histoire un peu compliquée avec Jim Shooter, qui était à l'époque à la tête de certains types.
We were in negotiations to renew my 3-year contract.
Il était en renégociation de son contrat pour 3 ans.
And I felt I had been lied to in a couple of ways, so I just said goodbye and I went to work for DC, which had offered me a job.
Yeah, and then you went to DC for a new contract for 3 years. Après, il est allé à DC pour un nouveau contrat pour 3 ans. Was it different to work with this new DC that was quite different from the DC you knew in the 60s? C'était probablement très différent comme DC que celui qu'il avait connu dans les années 60.
It was a lot easier because
c'était plus facile.
But I had been so accustomed to being the editor, basically, at least subject to Stan, the editor of the comics I wrote, so that I could sort of do what I wanted, in Conan and in the Avengers and the other books I wrote. And suddenly to be working on another editor who would say, do this or don't do that, I didn't take too well to that. After working for Stan Lee, who I thought was the best editor in comics,
En fait, lui,
best
était
comics
content de
writer,
travailler.
it was very hard to have some other editor tell me what to do and have me take him seriously.
Il avait du mal en fait à travailler avec d'autres éditeurs et lui, il était vraiment venu pour travailler avec Stan Lee. You talked to Stan Lee until the very end. You were with him like 2 days before he died. Like,
Physically less than 48 hours, yeah.
Yeah,
Like we were there on like an afternoon, and he died the morning, and 2 days later. But of course, I would not have been surprised if he had died months earlier. I wouldn't have been surprised if he lived for a number more years. He was frail, but he seemed very cheerful.
En fait, il a fréquenté in and out, comme on dit en anglais, plus ou moins Stan Lee jusqu'au bout. Il l'a rencontré 2 jours avant sa mort. I would like to show you a picture of you, the last one, with Stan, if you don't mind. Est-ce qu'on pourrait revoir? C'était la photo, la dernière photo, la dernière rencontre.
That's us.
J'ai demandé tout à l'heure est-ce qu'on la prépare. J'espère qu'elle est prête. Voilà.
Yes, that's one of the three last.
Merci beaucoup. Did he call you? Still call you Roy Boy when he went?
No, Roy. That was more for public consumption rather than that was more of a joke. What had happened, I had been wanting to see him.
Il voulait le voir, il voulait absolument le rencontrer. Je lui ai demandé s'il l'appelait toujours Roy Boy, c'est comme il l'avait appelé dans la petite vidéo de 1976.
My friend and agent John Cimino, who's out there in the audience,
son ami qui est dans la salle, qui était présent et qui a pris cette photo.
We made some contacts and so forth, and arranged to go see Stan. I mean, we flew out, he from Boston and I from South Carolina, all the way across the country for what we knew would be, if we were lucky, maybe a half hour with Stan. And he didn't feel well that day, and we wouldn't have seen him at all.
Il est venu de Caroline du Sud exprès pour le voir, mais il savait très bien que si Stan Lee n'était pas très en forme, il n'allait pas pouvoir le voir ce jour-là. Ça dépendait dans quel état il était ce jour-là.
He was fairly cheerful. The first thing he said to me when I walked into the room was, he said, Sapper said, "Hiya, Roy." That's what he always did. Hiya, Roy.
Il était très, très content de le rencontrer. Il a dit, hey, salut, Roy.
And then he said, this trying to live to be 100 is not as much fun as I thought it would be.
Voilà, il a dit, on avait envie de vivre jusqu'à 100 ans, mais je trouve pas ça aussi sympa que ce qu'on pensait que ça allait être.
But he was fairly cheerful, but of course he tired very quickly.
Il était fatigué, évidemment, il s'est fatigué très rapidement.
There was a person there to show him one of the first copies off the press of the limited edition of the new book I had written for Tasha about the Stan Lee story, which weighs about 15 or 16 pounds.
Et il lui a montré les premières pages du livre qu'il a écrit, qui est sorti d'ailleurs sur Stan Lee, qui s'appelle Stan Lee Story, qu'il a fait aux éditions Taschen, qui est un très beau livre. Il était venu pour lui montrer entre autres les premières.
We put a pillow on his knees, so it wouldn't weigh him down. And one of the first things he asked was told, the guy who brought the book said, well, this edition is going to cost $1,500 a copy. And Stan just looked at him, a double take, and said, who the hell's going to buy it?
En fait, il y a eu d'abord chez Taschen, fait souvent ça, les éditions Taschen, ils font des éditions ultra limitées. Et il expliquait qu'en fait, les quelques exemplaires ultra limités signés dans un coffret un peu spécial avaient coûté $1,500. Et quand Stan Lee a appris ça, depuis, il y a une version beaucoup moins chère, évidemment, une centaine d'euros qui est sortie chez Taschen. Mais il paraît qu'il s'est arrêté, il a dit, mais qui va payer cette somme-là? C'est incroyable. And is it true that you talk to each other about his next cameos in movies? Est-ce que c'est vrai que vous avez parlé ensemble des prochaines caméos qu'il aurait pu faire dans les films?
Yes. Yes, I mentioned something about the cameos, about how I was always surprised that even in South Carolina, I would go see a movie where I'd go in the afternoon when only maybe 5 or so people are in the theater, and still when his cameo would come on the screen, there'd always be someone to recognize him. And he said, I'd like to do some more cameos, but I don't want to have to if they didn't have to do so much makeup, if they just wouldn't have to, you know, make me up for hours.
Il lui disait qu'il se rendait compte qu'à chaque fois que même lui, en Caroline, dans l'état de Caroline, lorsqu'il allait voir les films avec les films Marvel et qu'il y avait les petits caméos qui apparaissaient de Stan Lee, les gens réagissaient de manière sympathique à chaque fois. Et donc lui, il disait, j'aimerais bien en faire encore, mais s'il pouvait ne pas avoir à chaque fois à passer par autant de maquillage, c'est un peu compliqué à chaque fois, mais qu'il aimait bien, il aurait bien voulu encore en faire.
So anyway, after about a half hour or less, you know, we felt he was getting tired. I called John to introduce him, you know, to him and so forth. John took the 3 pictures, one of the 3 of this and the 2 others, and it was very nice. And then we sort of left him. One of the things, maybe you can translate that.
Oui, au bout d'une demi-heure, donc c'est ce qu'il disait tout à l'heure, Stanley évidemment était extrêmement fatigué, donc son ami qui est dans la salle a pris quelques photos de la rencontre, dont la photo qu'on a vue tout à l'heure, et puis il s'est dit qu'il allait à ce moment-là quitter la pièce et laisser Stanley.
Stan had said many times, and I wrote it in the book, that one of the things he had hated about his childhood was because his family was so poor during the Great Depression that they always were at the back of the building. And every time he looked out a window, he was always staring 10 feet across at the back of another building, you know, as opposed to the street.
Ils étaient tellement pauvres, Stanley a beaucoup raconté, il raconte dans le livre aussi qu'il vient d'une famille extrêmement pauvre dans la période de la dépression, un mot français, la crise, je pense, aux États-Unis. Et en fait, ce qui était triste, c'est que toujours dans sa maison, il avait toujours un mur devant lui également dans sa maison. Je pense qu'il vivait dans des maisons extrêmement proches les unes des autres.
And he said he would consider himself a success when he had a front view, when he could look out on the street and have a nice view instead of
une belle vue dégagée.
Back. And so when I was reading, I was thinking about the place. He's sitting there looking out through this big plate glass window, past his, not huge, but a swimming pool and a nice patio, and then a view from the top of the hill of the city below. And so I was thinking, well, he obviously, you know, at least he finally made what he wanted. He had a front of the building view and so forth. I hope he appreciated the fact that he had made that long journey as far as he had, and he had a very good life for those 95 or so, almost 96 years.
Ce qui a plu à Roy Thomas, c'est que justement ce jour-là, lorsqu'il était chez Stanley, là il avait une belle vue, il y avait une grande fenêtre, une grande baie vitrée qui donnait sur une piscine et qui donnait sur des collines. Et il s'est dit, ce Stanley qui aujourd'hui a 95 ans, qui au bout de son voyage a réussi d'une certaine manière à avoir cette vue dégagée dont il rêvait quand il était plus jeune, et à l'époque où effectivement ses parents très pauvres ne pouvaient pas lui offrir ça. That's a nice last image of him. C'est une belle dernière image de lui. Merci beaucoup Roy Thomas. Thank you so much.
Making a living out of the industry, basically one way or another for over half a century, I think that's kind of an accomplishment. Stan did it, I did it, a few other people do it. That's the thing I'm proudest of. The success of it, the Kree Skrull War storyline, or having had and creating Wolverine, who became, through the hands of others more than me, one of the most popular comic characters in the world. But it was all done in concert with other people. It was never just me.
Probablement Conan, et puis il a beaucoup aimé apporter Conan à Marvel, c'est quelque chose qui lui a beaucoup plu, et participer, même si c'est d'autres, comme il le dit, d'autres gens ont créé le personnage de Wolverine, mais c'est vrai qu'il l'a rendu extrêmement populaire, le Wolverine qu'on connaît aujourd'hui. On le doit beaucoup à Roy Thomas pour ce personnage. Merci beaucoup. Merci de votre question. Merci.
Movies. Pourquoi ou est-ce que vous aimeriez?
Not in the movies yet, but if I was on one of the Netflix shows, Daredevil, the 3rd season of Daredevil. I was a prisoner in orange.
Il a été dans Daredevil, dans la série Netflix Daredevil en français. Et a priori, il était un des prisonniers. À un moment dans la
Est-ce qu'il aimerait en refaire d'autres? Et juste rapidement une question, il y a Conan qui a rencontré les Avengers récemment dans les comics. Est-ce qu'il aime bien le fait que Conan soit maintenant dans l'univers Marvel d'une certaine manière.
Oh, I didn't know that. Conan the Barbarian met the Avengers in the comics, right?
They tell me that, yes. I'm not sure.
Yeah,
Did you know that?
I knew.
It's Savage Avengers.
Yes, yes. Oh, I've seen it, but
Do you think it was a good idea or not?
if it sells comic books, I suppose it's a good idea. I wouldn't want to do it.
Ouais, il n'aurait pas voulu le faire. Hein. C'est quand même...
It's their business. I don't have any quarrel with it. It's all right. It's not my fault.
C'est pas trop son truc. Oh, bonjour Stan. He's here.
Oh,
Hi Roy.
no.
Alors, moi j'aurais voulu savoir, pour les histoires de tous les différents super-héros qu'il a fait, sur quel super-héros il a préféré travailler.
What was your favorite superheroes you worked on? Quel est le super-héros sur lequel il a préféré travailler?
I've always, since I was 4 years old, I have a great weakness for the old version of the DC character Hawkman, just because of the way he looked.
Il adorait Hawkman, Hawkman, qu'il avait découvert chez DC quand il était gamin.
At Marvel, the two would be Conan. I liked writing Conan better than anyone. And the other character that I enjoy either reading when Stan wrote him or writing myself was the Thing, the Fantastic Four, who is and always has been since 1961 and remains my favorite Marvel character.
Et son personnage préféré depuis le début des années 60 chez Marvel, ça reste la chose, The Thing, des 4 Fantastiques. Voilà, ça a toujours été son personnage préféré. Merci. We'll take one last one, if you don't mind. Et on va prendre une toute dernière question.
Bonjour. Vous avez fait des personnages qui sont assez violents comme Conan, Morbus ou Wolverine. Je me demandais si vous n'aviez pas eu des problèmes avec le Comic Con Authority.
I heard Wolverine, I heard that's all.
You said you worked on very violent
I don't know that much about having trouble with Wolverine, but then I wasn't the editor-in-chief by the time Wolverine really started coming out. With Conan, we had a lot of problems.
Et Conan, ils ont eu beaucoup de problèmes.
Because, for one thing, how in a comics code-approved magazine, how are we going to show Conan stabbing somebody? You know.
Parce qu'on montrait Conan en train de tuer des gens.
So you weren't supposed to show what they call exit wounds, swords coming out or going into people. So, you know, what are they going to do?
Il est stabbé, il est transpercé.
So what was he going to do? Hit them with the flat of the sword? Oh, I couldn't do that. So we developed a lot of clever stratagems, like having it stab characters kind of off camera, the sword go off camera, and the guy say, ah.
Il pouvait tricher, donc en fait il mettait un coup d'épée, mais il le faisait off camera, en dehors de la bulle, enfin le bord du panier, et ça ne se voit pas exactement.
And the artist John Buscema, later when he took over Conan, he developed a nice thing with some characters. He would have somebody that Conan was going to stab, a soldier or something, wearing a cape. So then you'd be looking past the guy's back, and you would see Conan stabbing, but you wouldn't see the wound going in, and you wouldn't see the thing coming out, but the cape would kind of stick out with the point. You didn't see the sword going through it, but you saw the cape, and you knew what was happening.
Il mettait le personnage qui allait mourir devant, et puis il mettait souvent des capes, comme ça on ne voyait pas l'épée passer à travers le personnage que Conan allait tuer. On vient de me faire signe, we need to stop now because there are so many panels again. Merci beaucoup d'avoir